Bo, good morning, Dave.
Good morning.
How are you, mate?
Very good. Yourself?
Good, buddy. Where are you?
I'm actually in Double Bay in Sydney auction rooms. Yeah,
Ah.
I use this for some coaching and stuff because I got a couple of I got another Zoom after this, and then I got a face-to-face session with a few people. Yeah.
Coolies?
So, no, Clarence White's auction rooms.
Your name is
Yeah.
White.
Yeah.
All right, let me
so he lets me use it.
All right, we've got Stokes here. We've got Allison, Brendan's dead, Tony's there, Danny Slater, Lisa, Jeff, Johnny, Rosie, Adam, Batesy, Brody, Tash, Katie, Logan, Stewie O'Brien, welcome. Alex Woodgate, David Blues. All right, there's probably a few more coming on.
No worries.
30. All right. So, guys that are on, what I'm really excited about. So I've known now. I started in '99, and Adrian was in my marketplace back then. So knowing each other, what's that? 20, 21, 22 years. Very close with his brother Marcello. Who's opposite of my mate Adrian. But what I love about this, guys, we've had some amazing training, Bowie. We've had some of the best up here. We work really closely with Lee. We've got Lee Woodward. We've got Jeff Jowett that's in our business once a month. Josh Vegan was supposed to come up here on Monday. But the big difference, which Adrian's going to talk about, is Adrian's actually out there listing and selling, guys. So when you hear the war stories of how good fucking Vegan was, or how good Tom Panos might be, or any of that crap, they're actually out there where Adrian is, guys. So whatever Adrian's talking about is working in the market. And being up and down Sydney and different areas of Sydney, I can tell you the area that Adrian operates, there's no better operators on the planet than that East Suburbs market. The biggest sharks, the most talented, the hardest working, and Adrian's been at the top of his game for 20 years. How about that for a little? Adrian, you impressed with that, mate?
Mate, I like it. Yeah, but it's 30 years I've been in the industry, mate. So I'm showing my age, but nonetheless, 32 actually. Yeah. So I'm older than you, mate. But no, I really appreciate that. But really excited about connecting with all of you guys. You know, I know a few of you like Brendan and a couple of others. So it's really exciting to be here. And I'm glad that we've booked in like a set and forget sort of, monthly session, because that's what coaching's all about. It's not just, receiving some high level, fluffy, motivational type messaging. It's really about consistency, accountability, skills, and getting granular, and I think that's what set me apart with my coaching business. That's why it's sort of probably taken off so well, is that, as you said, Dave, I've still got an EBU that's running. I only spend, probably 10% of my time in that EBU, but it's still responsible for 60 to 70 sales. In my height, as you know, I was doing 130, 150 sales. But it's still amazing how, I can have that brand still ticking over with a really effective business unit and create scale and leverage and efficiencies and process. So that's part of the coaching really as well. You've frozen, mate.
I should be.
You froze. Did you hear all that?
Yeah, gotcha. You're good.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. Your image is frozen, but if you can see me, that's fine.
Mate, I just had Botox. I don't move.
Okay. All good, my man.
You're good to go, mate. I'll text you if anything happens, but you're good.
Okay, no worries. So is there anything specifically you want me to touch on, Dave, in particular? You want me to prompt me with a few things, or or even if we go around the grounds and see, what specifically people want to talk about?
Mate, Adrian, I think, mate, we've got a couple of people in our team that are treating this business really serious. We've got the old thing called potential in our team and right through it. And then we've got some newbies. So I think it's about getting serious in your career. And I think you did those 130, 150 sales. You just didn't have one good year, but you had 20 fuck all the time I've known. Had 20 good years in a row. And you were consistent. So, let's talk about what what does an agent of, not even today, but in 2023, what does an agent have to look like, and who do they need to be, and how do they have to behave to be successful, you know, in the future?
Yeah, sure. Well, look, I think it would be remiss not to start this first session to talk about the foundational type of process and foundational type of work, which is really, as boring as it might sound, really starts with databasing and having that database. And the only reason I say that, and I know you hear this ad nauseum, you know, from everyone, oh, you got to build a database and prospect and all of that. Well, there's a reason a lot of people talk about it. It's because anyone that's reached any degree of success, Dave, you know, has a quite a impervious and fortified database. And the reason that I've still got a business unit ticking over today with little involvement from me is because of that foundational database work that I did during that it was actually 26 years straight. And I don't say this to impress you guys, but to impress upon you the importance of data. It was 26 years straight where I sold over 100 pieces of real estate. So during that 26 years, was the market performing well in some occasions, and then it wasn't performing not so well? Yes. Was interest rates sometimes high and interest rates low? Yes. Were there changes of government? Yes. Was there black swan events like we're experiencing now in COVID? But back then it was either a recession, a GFC, 9/11, all pivotal moments in global history that do impact our markets. Was the McGrath brand that I was working for, you know, doing well in the media and then not so well in the media? Yes. So the reason I mention all those things, Dave, is because they're all out of marketplace stuff, which Jeff Jowett would help you with in that you can't control some stuff, you know, but you certainly can control the controllables, and controlling the controllables in real estate is creating yourself some unconditional and non-negotiable metrics. So I can only share what I did and what I still do. And the only metric I had in my team, and the only metric I've still got in my team, which will surprise a lot of people, is how many new property owners, regardless if they were selling or not, but how many new property owners did we add to our database on a monthly basis? And for years, for 26 years straight, the KPI for us was 100 to 150. Now it's 250, only because I've grown and rescaled my team. And to be frank with you guys, that is the only metric I focus on and did focus on for you know, almost 3 decades. And remarkably, there would be 10 sales that would occur every single month without fail. But we didn't focus, as Jeff Jowett would talk about, on the outcome. We focused very much on the process. And the process for us was not necessarily to meet, but to identify and capture and incubate and nurture people that owned real estate, regardless if they were selling or not. So the biggest mistake a lot of agents make is they're playing the short game and the catch and kill game, which is fine. But if they speak to someone who's like, oh, look, I'm not looking to do anything, definitely not selling, getting carried out in a box, it's in my super fund, you know, whatever the response is, usually they won't act upon that. Where you know, my paradigm has always been, my radar goes up as soon as I hear that, and now my team, when they hear that and they say, great, that's a commission check in 3, 5, 7, 10 years time. And I can't begin to tell you the amount of people that even just through what I call reactive prospecting, which Batesy and Brendan would have heard that terminology before because they've done training with me before. Reactive prospecting is based on when you've got listings. So there's 3 touch points, as you know. There's phone inquiries coming in, there's email inquiries coming in, and there's people, you know, coming through your opens, and therefore an opportunity to do callbacks. That they're all opportunities for reactive prospecting. Now, we know, because I've done the stats, and it doesn't matter where you are located geographically, because this statistic is geographically indiscriminate. We know that anywhere between 1 to 3 out of 10 people that you come into contact with or are in your ecosystem, if you like, own a piece of real estate. Now, it's on the lower end if you're dealing with a first home buyer market, and it's on the higher end if you're dealing with more established homes. But it's still on average, 2 in every 10. The problem is, Dave, we're during this reactive prospecting piece, and this is only part of the solution, when people call and ask you for a price guide, or where people email you and there's a phone number and we quite lazily just respond by email template, or when we're doing our callbacks, what agents can't say hand on heart 100% of the time is they identify whether that person owns a piece of real estate, regardless whether they're selling or not, and database them, nurture them, incubate them.
Yeah, okay, Florence.
So that is something that is a non-negotiable in not only my team, but any team that I work really, really closely with. And there's some agents, Dave, that have been in the industry 20 years, and I tell them that and they think, shit, I've just torn up so much money over the last 2 decades because I was only focused on the short game. And it's just a great metaphor for gold nuggets slipping through your fingers, because, I tell stories and Dave calls them war stories. I tell stories that, my phone rang while I was driving 10 years ago. Someone inquired on a property, rather than just assuming they were going to come to the open house and I'd get their phone number. Then I'd ask for their number and their email address. I'd really excitingly put them in my database as I would 10 or 20 people that day, and then plug them into my nurturing system, which is really easy. It's just a 30-day newsletter and a maximum of 90-day connect by phone, no later than that, every 90 days without fail. And then people call me and say, Adrian, you've been sending me a newsletter for 7 years. You've been calling me, even though I've never returned one of your calls, but you've been leaving me a message for 4 years. Can you come and list my property? Not come and appraise it, but come and list it, because frequency builds trust, process builds trust. So I think, before we sort of launch into anything else, I've got to tell people that reactive prospecting piece and those gold nuggets that potentially could be slipping through your fingertips through those 3 touch points, which is email inquiry, phone inquiry, and callbacks. And we haven't even started talking about proactive prospecting, which is things like success marketing, just sold calls, just listed calls, door knocking, social media marketing, DL cards, local sponsorship. I mean, they're just different layers altogether. So I urge everyone, in this session to create themselves a KPI, whether it's through reactive prospecting or proactive prospecting, to create a minimum expectation for themselves to identify and database and nurture a minimum of about 30 people per week. It's only about 5 or 6 people a day that you need to identify that owns a piece of real estate in an area that you can service. Now, from what I understand, Dave, your business development area or your geographical markets are massive, right? Like, you've got no restrictions. You guys can cover, quite a wide audience. So you're talking potentially tens of thousands of people that could belong in your database, So in terms of what the traditional agent has done very well, which made them successful, and I'm talking about anyone from Alex Phillips to Josh Tessalon, all these guys, have had this type of training from me from the start, and therefore they've been able to develop a big business up until what you say, Dave, which is the agent of the future. Not a lot's going to change apart from technology, really. The fundamentals about growing, nurturing a database, they're never going to change, never going to change. So in 2 or 3 years' time, it's going to be the same story. So that would be my absolute first non-negotiable for everyone in this session, to really track themselves on a weekly basis, to make sure they're adding at least 25, 30 people per week that own a piece of real estate. Don't be seduced by what they tell you about, I'm not selling, getting carried out in the box, it's in my super fund. Just ignore that. The radar goes up as soon as you identify they own a piece of real estate. You put them in your database, and then you implement a very simple nurturing strategy, which is a a newsletter every 30 days, and no later than a 90-day connect. Now, when I say 90-day connect, that doesn't mean you've got to actually speak to the person, but it means that you've either got to send them a personalized SMS, you've got to leave them a detailed voicemail, or you've got to send them a personalized email, because our business, the only thing that has changed since Dave and I first started was that back then it was very much a loyalty and customer service business. Today, it's a customer service and top of mind and awareness business. Okay. So someone doesn't have to love you or be, you don't have to, perform a personality competition in order for a vendor to be in contact with you. All you've got to do is be top of mind. Okay. And, Alex Phillips is a really good friend of mine, and I'll use him and his example. There's a lot of people that say, oh, look, I didn't really want to use Alex because I think he's a bit aggressive and he's a bit busy and he's got a lot of listings, but he's just everywhere, like he's always calling me. I'm always getting email, whatever it is. So it just proves to you. And look, he did 12 to 14 million GCI the financial year that just finished. Now, you can't live off that, but it's not a bad start, right? So I say that facetiously, but it just goes to show that, if with Alex, and he's a friend of mine, as I said, but I would label him as an unremarkable person. Nice guy, skillful agent, disciplined, but unremarkable. So I think the importance of that, Dave, if that resonates with you, I'm sure it'll resonate with the team, is something that's the first point of contact and the first thing that we need to do as a business,
Adrian, mate, let's talk about, there's two things I wouldn't mind. The next question I'm going to ask you is what you do if you start to import tomorrow. But here, especially on the mid-north coast, we're lucky. Mate, I know the hours you used to do, it was to 7, 10 o'clock. And if you look at what Alex Phillips did too, and different other agents in the area, we're looking to have a well-rounded team. We're looking to have that balance. What I do really want from the team is intensity. All right, that intensity. So, mate, that intensity that I know your team worked at and things like that, like I say to the guys, mate, if we do 8 to 6, we can have the best life up here. Talk about that intensity, mate. Talk about the intensity of what you know of the elite agents, or how you kept that intensity for the amount of time that you did.
Yeah. Look, it's a really good point, Dave, and I'm really glad that we're talking about it because, being in the industry 32 years, I can tell you now, guys, I've paid the stupidity tax on your behalf because I was one of those agents that did burn out, didn't appreciate balance. Okay. And in fact, David probably know, on 2 occasions, I was actually incapacitated for months due to chronic fatigue and glandular fever. Right. So that's unnecessary. If I could rewind the clock, I would have used intensity, as David puts it, rather than trying to rush the process and trying to work so many waking hours where there's just no life. So I don't think it's a sustainable model. There are a couple of people that can still do it, but in the main, I love at a leadership level, Dave, that you're advocating balance because it's crucial. All that's going to do is create longevity in your business. What it's also going to do is create a more sustainable and enjoyable model, because if you're not on purpose and you're not appreciating the other aspects of your life, and your life isn't just not consumed by real estate, then your business and your listings and sales are only going to improve anyway, so why rush it? And I'll give you the perfect example. So I coach an agent here in Sydney called Alex Smith, really, really good young guy. He was an associate agent 12 months ago, and today, 12 months later, it's him plus 2 team members, okay? And he just finished his first financial year as a standalone agent at $1.3 million, right? So and he was busting at the seams to say, Bowie, what more can I do? What else can I do? How many hours do I need to work? I'm like, dude, just trust me. just go at my pace. My pace works. I've paid the stupidity tax. You don't feel guilty if you're not in the office until 9 o'clock at night. It's not sustainable. It's not healthy, and it's not effective. So what's the answer? The answer is the hours you are working. As Dave put it, increase the intensity. Now, intensity doesn't need to be a physical or a mental thing. I think it's both. But it definitely is attached to focus, and focus, even though that might sound like an opaque and broad and nebulous term, it's still something that, if every phone call, every email, every SMS I send, every face-to-face meeting, whether it's a buyer, a listing, a price check, a current vendor meeting, a door knocking session, whatever it is, I'm just going to be laser beam focused, and I'm going to give it 100%. Because
Adzi, how do you get in that space, mate? I think some of our team don't even know that space. Like, how do you get in that zoom, that groove?
Well, there's a few things. Like, the main reason, Dave, people are stuck in life, or they're not in that focused state, is usually, and I'll take a long time to answer this question, but it's important because it's not a quick fix, right? Normally, the reason people are not in that focused state is either due to a lack of strategy, which I'll talk about, a lack of skill, which I'll talk about, a lack of actual state itself, or a lack or a story that they're telling themselves. So I'll give you an example. Let's say that while the hours you are working, 8 till 6, let's call it, and let's say you're only focused or intense for 4 of those hours. Well, it's possible that you've convinced yourself of a story that for the first couple of hours of the day, you're not a morning person, right? Now that's complete bullshit, right? You've just told yourself that many times that you're not a morning person, therefore it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And of course, you're not going to be a morning person, right? Secondly, if you look at your state, that's usually got to do with not having a morning ritual. So a morning ritual is either exercise, meditation, journaling, breathing, whatever you want to do, but it's got to be a ritual in the sense that you're segueing from waking up to actually going into intensity and focus mode, and there needs to be a conduit in there. Now, you can't just go from one to the other by just getting dressed and then saying, well, now I'm suddenly in focus and intensity mode. There needs to be a segue. And Dr. Fred Gross used to talk about it years ago, and I was very fortunate enough to be one of his students, 25 odd years ago. And he used to call it switch on to channel 37. Now, channel 37 was just a metaphor, but what he meant by it, for those old enough to remember, the old radio stations or the old radio players used to have, a little dial, and you'd tune in, and it was very, very fuzzy either side of the station. So it'd be really fuzzy. Then you'd just fine tune it by 1 millimeter, and then the radio station would be clear as daylight. But if you moved it another millimeter to the right, it'd just be fuzz again. So that's a really good analogy and metaphor for tuning into that channel 37 or the business channel, let's say. And the only way you're going to do that is by pausing and not being in a manic rush the entire time. And whether it's a 15-minute ritual, a 30-minute ritual, or a 45-minute ritual, makes no difference. But do something to get the blood flowing, to clear your mind, to journal and get out of your head and actually put it on paper. So if anyone's practiced meditation, which I'm sure there's people in this room that have practiced meditation, I mean, that's almost the perfect one, because all meditation is focusing on one thing, which is a mantra, and then clearing all the other thoughts out of your head. Now, exercise is also a form of meditation, because you are focused on just one thing. And it allows you to tune into that business channel when you do make that segue and you are making those phone calls and you are making those emails and door knocking and prospecting sessions, you know.
Just for the team, we talk hats. So that, I mean, whether we're talking hats or whether we're talking channels, just to bring it back to sort of the language that we've used, often I'll be like your other enlisting hat, canvassing hat, channels, whatever works. Yeah.
Absolutely. And the same could be said, Dave, of after 6, when you go home and you're with your family and loved ones, well, you need to tune in to that hat or if you like, you know what I mean? So that there's no room at 7:30 when you're having a beautiful meal with your loved one. There shouldn't be room for being on your phone and actually returning an email. I mean, you know, if we are not disciplined enough to actually discard that and return it for the following morning, I mean, unless it's a really urgent deal that's got to be done on the spot. I mean, the same could be said about that. So look, you know, the whole work-life balance formula, I call it a bit of a misnomer in a sense that, you know, I don't think there is work-life balance to a degree, but I do think there is work-life harmony. So how do you make those two factors, the work and the life, how do you make them harmoniously be symbiotic? And how do you make them work together? Because, you know, there's some agents I work with, for example, who their personal life is actually a really good Trojan horse into their business life, you know. So Marnie Senior, for example, Dave, who you know, like she's always going to like kids' sports or whatever, but, you know, for her, she's not separating them because that's where she's meeting potential clients as well. So I think it's dangerous to use the word work-life balance, because then what you try and do is separate them. What I would rather you say is, how do I harmoniously make them work symbiotically together? Because real estate, even though we're saying it's an 8 to 6 job or 9 to 5 job, it really is a lifestyle. It's not corporate Australia. Or it's not blue collar worker where you clock in and clock out to a degree. There needs to be some flexibility, Dave, you know.
And mate, that intensity, I mean, when you started those sort of calls from where we are, the modern agent, you know, I've got members of my team that think 5 calls are enough, and we've got others that, you know, might get to 50 or 40 to 50. Obviously, it's the quality of the phone call. I use even the number of calls not as that you need to hit 50. It's the metaphor of 50, because if you're going for that, I know that there's been at least 2 to 3 hours of focus that day on calls. I mean, if you know, I've got Stokes' head in there, young guy that's got potential, but he's 23, 24 with not much going on outside of work. He's got plenty of space. Don't you, Stokesy? I mean, what sort of time? How many hours a day would you have him on the phone?
You just got to unmute.
Stokesy, let's bring you on.
There he goes. There he goes.
How many hours do you want him on the phone?
Yeah, go for it, mate.
How many hours a day? How many hours have you spent on the phone this week, Stokesy?
Doing prospecting calls, probably 2 hours.
That's nice in front of the team. Now, how many hours, really?
Or half an hour a day for 4 days.
Yeah, there we go. Half an hour a day. Would he get a job with you, Bowie?
Well, not if he was a full-time associate. No. So look, you know, everyone, Andrew and everyone, Dave, is looking for the silver bullet and the magic dust, you know, and you know, Brendan's been around some top agents, and let me tell you, there is no silver bullet or magic dust. All these guys that are achieving, you know, phenomenal results, man, they're really glorified telemarketers. I'll be honest with you, because and I still call myself after 32 years in it, a glorified telemarketer, because really this business is so bloody simple, guys. It's like, you know, you got to make as many calls as you possibly can to create as many face-to-face meetings as you possibly can, and those face-to-face meetings will eventuate into listings, offers, or sales. Like, if I had to explain the industry in a really rudimentary fashion to someone who didn't work in it, that's the way I would explain it. Yet people in the industry still don't get it. You know, most of them still don't get it. They think that there's this social media magic dust. They think that there's this Google AdWord magic dust, or there's this call-ins coming into the office. It's all a myth. It's all a myth. So it's a numbers game to a degree, but also the quality of the calls and what the outcome and the call to action from that call is really critical. So there's no use, making all these calls if we're not making notes every time we speak to them in our CRM, and then not retasking them to use. Are you guys on Agent Box, Dave? Or
yeah, we've just gone, mate.
Yeah.
We've just gone.
Yeah.
We've just started.
Yeah, so to use Agent Box language, it's insanity to put anyone in your database or to even have anyone in there currently that doesn't have a task attached to them. That's just crazy, right? Otherwise, all you're going to do is every day look at this same list and say, okay, well, who should I call out of this? I mean, waving a magic wand, guys, what you want to do, and what I did for 30 years straight is I pressed one button on my CRM. It wasn't Agent Box then, but it's the same thing. It makes no difference. I pressed one button, which you can do on Agent Box, and there were 30 to 60 calls to make that day that was scheduled either from 3 weeks ago or 3 months ago. I made notes every time I spoke to them and retasked them depending on how the conversation went. So if the conversation was, look, not yet, Adrian, but you know what, we're renovating the kitchen, we wouldn't mind getting an idea in 6 weeks. Great. Make a note, reschedule the call. And I was doing this in real time with my headphone on, reschedule the call for 4 weeks, right? Another one might have said, Adrian, no way, I'm getting carried out in a box, never selling. No worries, schedule a call, 90 days time. Because what we've all learnt before, the hard way, is that we've spoken to people who've said, oh, we're never selling. And then you either don't follow them up or schedule a call for 1 year's time. And then within 3 or 4 months, you see a for sale sign pop up, or you see it pop up on domain.com or real estate.com. That's sickening, right? It shouldn't happen. So to use Agent Box language, you should be able to press a button every single day and have those calls that were scheduled with very brief notes attached to them, and knock those calls out the very first thing you do in the morning, non-negotiable. Because let me tell you, a lot of agents I speak to today, they say, oh, I've got no structure, I need an ideal day and all. I say, bullshit, it's all crap. You don't need an ideal day. All you need to do is do the calls with an AM in front of them, right? That were scheduled to call. And then for the rest of the day, I want the day to be unstructured, because when you think about it, our business is a very fluid and reactive business. Like we've woken up some days and gone to bed that night and actually listed or sold a piece of real estate that we had no idea was going to happen that day, right? We've all been in that position. So that tells us that real estate is a very fluid and reactive business. So I want you to be available for most of the day. I want you to be able to talk to buyers, talk to sellers, get an offer on a property, get in front of your vendor with that offer. So don't delude yourself that your day needs to be perfectly structured for the entire day. However, I do want you to carve out, whether it's an hour or 2 hours, to make those calls. Now, I've got to tell you, for 26 years straight, Dave, for me, it was 2 hours a day. And I've got to tell you, not one morning I woke up and actually looked forward to making those 2 hours worth of calls. Not one morning. However, 15 minutes into it, I'd be getting feedback like, oh, Adrian, really appreciate your call. Not doing anything yet, but do you mind calling me in 3 weeks? Oh, actually, Adrian, yeah, thanks for your call. I'll be ready in 2 weeks. Can we make a time to book something? So that got me focused,
On that, Adrian, I think what happens is they start making those calls, and then and they go 2 weeks on, and then nothing happens, and then they go, oh, this doesn't work. And I think what I love about having Adrian here is like, he's literally, I mean, I watched him in the marketplace, yeah, so I saw it firsthand, and I know from friends and different people that have dealt with Adrian, he did make those 30 to 50 calls, and I reckon he's being modest. I reckon there are a lot more at different times. 30 to 50 calls every day for 26 years, and it's that consistency. And I think for our team, Adrian, to go to the next level, if they want to be real about their career, like if they're out of the office and I'm door knocking, like you like, don't bullshit. Like if you want to be a professional and you want to make a living, and we don't need to do those crazy hours. We're even hearing from Adrian, it's 1 to 2 hours of focus calls a day, but then it's the follow-up. But it's the second and the third year, and I imagine the 5th and the 10th, where it's you've known Bob, you've already sold for him, you've sold for his auntie, and then it's more enjoyable. But we need to do that at least a year of hard work, yeah, to make it a bit more fun, if that.
I wouldn't put a time frame on it. I would say that this needs this discipline, this daily discipline, whether you're going to apply 1 or 2 hours. For me, it was 2 hours for nearly 30 years without fail. that needs to be perpetual. It needs to be for the rest of your career. It's just the people you're going to call is going to evolve, Dave. But those call sessions shouldn't end. So when I say 20 or 30 or 50 call, that might have been the people I actually spoke to for that 2 hours. But frankly, I probably left another 30 or 40 messages, and those messages were equally as effective because, hey, Adrian Bowe here from McGrath, spoke to you a while back, just touching base, seeing if your circumstances have changed. Love to give you a market appraisal on your property. Please give me a call, 0418 278, and then retask to use agent book language. Don't leave it in your task items, because that's what pisses a lot of people off with agent box, and then they just delete them all. And then retask for another 60 days, 30 days. So that detailed voice message is a very, very beneficial and dollar productive touch point, because remember what I said, we are now moving in to the customer service and top of mind business. So don't delude yourself. You're going to make these calls and people are going to answer the phone and say, shit, Brendan, I can't believe you called me today. I want to sell my house today. It doesn't work like that. It's a constant nurturing and incubation process forever. It's just that once you've been in the industry for a few years, then part of the formula is not only are you going to call people that are not necessarily looking to sell or who you met at an open house, you're going to start calling, like Dave talked about, people that you've sold for. So suddenly you're going to start implementing some past clients into your daily calls as well. And as Dave said, they're a lot better calls to have. It's like, hey, how's the house going? How you been? I mean, the reality is there's people on this call session today or on this Zoom meeting, Dave, that sold a property to someone 3 years ago, earned 20 grand fee or whatever it was, and that person, the buyer or the seller, hasn't heard from us since then. That's the unfortunate reality of it, right?
And I think what we forget is, like, obviously this business has got bigger. People are calling me all the time to try and sell me something, and often I'll let them go to the keeper. But I know that call's happened. That person's in my mind. They've left a print. I mightn't want to ring them now because I don't want it sold. Or I don't want that, but it's in my head. And I think we forget that message, there's like a reliability that you need to call that, an expectation that at some stage you'll do business with that person. Talking about that call, and I think no one does it better. I had a property that ended up selling through McGrath, but Alex was chasing it. The 45-second call. And I say to the guys, when we're doing these calls, it's not about a 5-minute, 10-minute chat. It's about an efficient call where you care and add value. Now, Alex is probably too efficient in my books for up here. But when you're calling, Adrian, like, let's talk about that call. They go, oh, what do I even speak to them about? What am I calling them about?
Yeah. Okay. So the first thing you need to do is acknowledge the notes in agent box. So whatever discussion was last time, I need you to make a note. So it could have been not selling, could have been possibly thinking to moving to Queensland, could have been renovating kitchen, could have been having new baby. There's always something that they'll tell you, right? So first thing I want you to do is when you call and say, hey, Dave, Adrian Bowe here from Elders, just touching base. I know last time we spoke, you were renovating the kitchen. How did that go? Oh, yeah, all good. No worries. Secondly, what I want to do is let you know about a property that's just come on the market or just sold. That I think is relevant for you to be aware of. So it doesn't have to be in the same street or even the same suburb. It's just something to be aware of, which is good. And then go straight for, would you like to get an updated market appraisal on your property? I'm always in the area, no obligation, costs you nothing. I find a lot of owners really, find it quite helpful and beneficial to know the value. Why don't I just pop around? So we've got to remember that rather than dialogue, you got to have objectives, because I'm not a massive fan of dialogue, because I want Brendan's call to sound different to Batesy's, to sound different to Stokesy's. I want it all, but I want the objectives to be the same, which is 1, acknowledge notes, 2, tell them about a just listed or just sold, whether it's Elders or someone else's, it makes no damn difference. And 3, always try and get into the door, right? And then 4, retask them for a period that you think's appropriate based on the vibration of that particular call. If everyone just remembers that, they're going to be much better off, because the problem with dialogue, Dave, is that our competition is no longer McGrath or Ray White. Our competition when it comes to phone work is, crazy people who try and sell you electricity or whatever, and they're all reading off a script. So if you sound scripted, then suddenly you're in competition with these people and you're going to be pigeonholed in the same category as these people, where, if you're coming across adding value by just listed, just sold, but then also not apologizing for the fact that you are trying to get in the door. So, and a lot of people say, well, how do you ask that? Well, very easy. Say, hey, why don't I pop around, give you an idea? Just, it'd be really good. I don't know if you're aware, but the market's improved, quite a lot, in this calendar year in particular. Cost you nothing. I'll pop around, so just remember those 4 objectives, acknowledge notes, advise of just listed, just sold, try and get in the door, and number 4, retask them for the next one. You stick to that formula 5 days a week, 50 weeks of the year, 2 hours a day. It's impossible not to do business, So
Adrian, we're about to finish up soon. I think, mate, the next time, just so we've got a clear structure, the question I'm going to have for you for the next coaching session next month, if you move to Port, we'll spend 45 minutes on how you'd build your business if you move to Port tomorrow with no database.
Yep.
The biggest thing that I've always admired is that you've treated yourself as a professional in the craft. I know you've gone on to do your MBA and your training and your coaching and all these different things. You love the industry. I really think that, that we need to become professional in this industry, like grasping that to the team, I pick on Stokes here a bit, but at his age, he's got the opportunity to become a professional, or he can become a part-timer and treat it. Why did you make that decision in a few minutes, and why does that mean so much to you? And how do you get your young guys to treat this as a real career, not just as, I'm just a bit of a salesman. I'm on some days, have a good month, bad month. Yeah.
Well, firstly, it starts with your presentation, Dave. So without fail, I'm dressed like this 6 days a week without fail, because and you guys might say, oh, but we're in Port, it's a bit more relaxed or whatever. I'd challenge that. I would challenge that personally. Doesn't mean you got to wear a tie or whatever, but I'd be always looking super professional, because you got to remember that you're dealing with clients that are also dealing with accountants, doctors, lawyers, or whatever, and mostly that's the way they present and talk, right? Secondly, I would always be very articulate in the way you speak. Now, it doesn't mean you've got to be a wordsmith or have an MBA, for example, but just slow it down, be articulate, and actually listen a lot. Like as agents, we're usually talking heads, and as agents, we're normally listening, but only for the purpose of waiting for that person to stop talking so we can start talking. You know what I mean? So actually slowing down a little bit and actually really listening to the client's needs, So if you're dealing with a buyer, for example, don't be seduced by what the legacy in the past was based on those old generic forms which had bed, bath, budget. Don't just ask those questions. Ask questions like, well, where do your kids go to school? How do you get to work? What's really important to you? What hobbies do you have? Do you need, just look, that is being more professional and actually adding value rather than just being a robot, because we've learned in strong markets, all sins are forgiven and it's a lot easier to be in real estate. But that's the exception, not the norm. The norm is a market that's a little bit more challenging, with a lot of competition, with buyers who want to buy property at a lower price, with vendors who are slightly inflated. So you need to be that really sensible, calm, trusted advisor who comes in, listens, creates a diagnosis, and then prescribes a solution, the same as what a doctor, lawyer, or accountant would do. So, being professional and going pro, as I call it, because I reckon from what you've just said, and respectfully to everyone, is some people might be playing park footy. I want you to skip reserve grade and go straight to first grade. And a lot of that starts with presentation and articulation, and also the type of trusted advisor recommendations that you're providing people. And in some cases, those recommendations may not necessarily be to earn a commission. So, you know, I can't tell you the amount of times I sat in front of someone and they said, look, we're thinking about either extending our house or selling. And I'll talk them through both options. They weren't aware of what the stamp duty was. They weren't aware of the selling costs. I asked them, do you love your neighbour? Do you love your street? The answer was yes to them all. They proceeded with the extension, and then 4 or 5 years later, they call me, and uncontested, I got the listing. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, reducing your expectation always that it's going to be remunerated straight away.
Yeah, it's all about the value, mate. Yeah. And obviously you're now on the coaching side and you've seen a lot of people come through this industry. It all starts a decision to play first grade. And how quick have you seen people turn around when they make that decision?
Very quick, very quick. But you've got to have hunger. You've got to have discipline. You've got to be process driven. And you've got to have high energy, right? So the reason I use those words, Dave, is because what you'll notice is not on there is product knowledge and negotiation skills, because frankly, anyone can learn product knowledge and negotiation skills. So I've met, you know, hundreds of agents that come in and, you know, they think they know the market well, or they think they're a master negotiator, whatever the case may be, but the phone is like kryptonite to them, right? And guess what? They haven't made it. They haven't made it, right? So it's the innate traits I look for, Dave. And you asked me, you know, sort of, I've seen a lot of people. It's the innate traits. Are they hungry? Are they disciplined? Are they process driven? Do they have a morning ritual? Do they present well? Do they get up early? Rather than, well, product knowledge and negotiation skills. I mean, I could, if I really wanted to, and I moved to Port Macquarie tomorrow, just to answer partly your question, if I really wanted to be a master in product knowledge about housing prices in Port Macquarie, I could learn that in 24 hours if I really immersed myself into it, right? So it's the innate skills that I'd come up there with, which is energy, passion, hunger, discipline. You look at Braden Walters, who changed markets, you know, from Newtown to Lennox Head, you know, and he's up to like 50% market share within a very short period of time. So there's plenty of examples like that where people, you look at Stefan Bertram, who's just moved from Ride to Mossman. And, you know, he's gained market share, you know, probably 20% in a very short period of time. And people just thought that he was crazy in doing that. So anything's doable, and you don't need that huge database to start with, but you definitely need that hustle and that hunger, that passion, that discipline. And there are hours involved, but it doesn't have to be hours that are not sustainable, you know?
When we're on, we're on. When we're off, let's enjoy our life. Let's build a life, as Jeffy Jowett's helped us a lot with.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I do a lot of work with Jeff. You know, he's a great guy, and everything that he talks about, even though it's not real estate related, it is real estate related, because you improve other areas of your life and suddenly your business improves, you know, and that's not a coincidence at all.
Beautiful. Well, mate, thank you for sharing today. This team have got to go and make some calls. Thanks for sharing. That was a really good base to start, and I can't wait for the next session where we map out. Adrian Bowe's moved to Port Macquarie. I'll just plant a seed. Yeah. I've had Marnie just text me now. We've been trying to get Marnie up here for a while.
Right. Yeah. No.
But, you know, as you know, mate, any of those elite top 20 McGrath agents, if they popped up into Port within 6 months, you know, it'd be crazy the market share they'd have because of those innate abilities that we're talking about. So looking forward to Adrian Bowe's business plan next month.
Easy. I'll have a 10-point plan ready to rock and roll.
Love it, mate. Thanks for sharing. Good to see you.
All right. And also anyone in this meeting, if you ever want to reach out and just call or have a chat or email me, just feel free to do so anytime.
Thanks, Adrian. Love it, mate. Have a good day. Thanks, buddy.
Okay. Pleasure. See you guys. Bye-bye.